Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Ford, and we are here for some hot and sticky. First off, I want to start this episode by apologizing for not having a hot and sticky video last week, when I had promised a hot and sticky video slash update slash write along. I'm not sure exactly how to refer to this series, but we've had to change our filming schedule a couple times this month for Dalton having work deals, and it threw me. This is so embarrassing to admit. It threw me off, not for what day of the week it was, but for what week of the month it was. I cannot believe that it is the 23rd of the month already. But beyond that, how you feeling? How you doing? Rambling along, rumbling along, stumbling along. How are we doing with our novel? It is day 23 of Hot and Sticky 18, and the official pace at 410 words a day is 9,430 words. If you have been keeping up, if you are not having a work in progress, if you did not start late, all of those things. So, for me, I have kept pace. I missed one day, and like I said, we had to change filming days a couple times for strip cover. And what that meant for me was waking up immediately, being on set, being here to film, finishing filming for the week's videos, going directly to work, after work, go to the gym, and then come home. So it was not tenable necessarily for me to finish writing that day. I think I got a few words, but it was one of those things where you get home and you're just like, you know what, this is not working. I'm not going to do anything productive. But along those lines, I think I would like to talk a little bit about keeping your head of steam, or at least not petering out. Because I think that around the 10,000 word mark, we're getting to the place where things probably start getting a little harder as far for some writers. Like, there are some writers who 10,000 words, I've barely got my pants off. But for me anyway, I am more of the sparse type of writer that 10,000 words in, my story has done a lot of things already, because I'm not the most detail-oriented writer. I am not the most verbose writer, if you will. And I shared the first 5,000 words of this on Patreon. And I plan on doing it again at the 15,000 word mark. Right now, I am at 13 something, I believe, 14 something. So coming up pretty quick here, I'm going to be uploading into Patreon what I've got for this novel again. But yeah, I think right around, for me anyway, this mark is when a novel-sized project really starts wearing on me. So I'm trying to keep steam as far as, what are we doing here? Where are we going? What do these characters want? Where are these characters going? What are the obstacles that are in their way? And one of the things that I learned the very first novel project like this that I did was, somewhere in the back of your head, you've got these ideas for things that are going to happen to these characters. And you think, yeah, but that's down the road, that's down the line. The thing that always works for me, once I start saying, yeah, but that's down the line, that's not yet, I've got to get something before there. No, go ahead and put that obstacle down now. And then there's going to be something after it. Because otherwise what you start doing is you'll have this idea in your head, well, that's probably around the mid-novel. That sounds like the big deal of this novel is that one thing. So you start stretching out where you are. You start stretching out the little things along the way, because you think, well, it's not until 30,000 words that I should be deploying that thing. And when you read novels, that's not exactly how it works. And when you read novels, sometimes that big obstacle is deployed in the first 10,000 words. And it's not until the 30,000-ish word mark that we really get an idea of what we're doing with it as a reader through the characters. And that is presumably how it works for the writer as well. Maybe obviously to a more polished extent afterwards. The writer has gone back and taken care of some things along the way, unless you're Chuck Palahniuk writing Adjustment Day. Anyhow, but yeah, throw those obstacles down and watch them sort themselves out, because who knows, that big idea you have that's the big problem that's going to face these characters might not be. It might be a small stumbling block along the way, or it might be. And we try several different problem-solving tactics that fail along the way, because not every novel has to follow a formula. In fact, if you consider yourself a literary writer, and as opposed to a genre writer, you shouldn't be following a formula. And I would argue that genre writers shouldn't follow a formula, but sometimes there are things that we fall into that necessitate themselves in a story. But as far as keeping writing going, as far as keeping the steam goes, Hemingway had something to say about this, and he said, "You always want to stop writing one day when you know the next sentence." So you're going to feel that end coming, right? This is why word limits are a pretty good idea for something like this. You set a word limit 410 words a day. Well, if I'm at 420 and I've got a lot of words left, I don't necessarily want to shoot my wad. I want to get to a point where I know the next sentence, so that tomorrow when I sit down, it's not shoving a boulder up a hill to get started. I sit down, I've got something to say, I get it out, and hopefully during the time that I've been writing that, during the time I've been writing that, I'm thinking about what comes next. But B, also, the entire day that I was away from this novel, that I was away from my work, that I was away from this piece, with that next sentence in my mind, the back of my mind is slowly gestating it. And a slow gestation is so much better than a rushed product. And I know there are those of us who always waited until the last minute to do our projects in school because I work better with pressure. That's bullshit. You don't work better with pressure. You just do it when you have to. So no one necessarily works better with pressure/time limits or constraints, but something like a word count is a good goal to make sure that you keep moving. I think that there are small differences there in the tactical advantage category. That was just a word salad, a word soup. I apologize. Neil Gaiman said that he builds stories like building a dry stack wall. If you search on YouTube Neil Gaiman on writing, this is a speech from a podcast. I can't remember the name of the podcast, but it'll come up. There'll be several different videos from what he said on that video, or on that podcast. Several different videos that people have made from that excerpt. But he says that you build stories like a dry stack wall, where all you do is you put down the next word, and enough next words later, you've got a wall. You've got a story. You put the next one down, you put the next one down, you put the next one down, and sooner or later you've got something there. But at first, this far along, it's not really going to look like much. Anyone can step over our wall as it stands now. And that's okay, because we're still building. We're still stacking those stones on top of one another. For myself, I am absolutely guilty that if I cannot think of the next word, the next phrase, the next sentence, the next thing to do, the next place to go, I will read the last sentence, close my eyes, and I will go to the story along by typing the word but, and, or so. And any one of those words, because this can all be edited out later. Maybe the next part of the sentence I start, so blank, is garbage. Well, guess what? I delete it later. But it gets me writing. It gets kinetic energy there. It puts something on the page, and once again I am pushing that boulder up the hill. But it's got some weight and steam behind it. That said, I think this is I missed a day. I don't remember if it was completely missed a day or not. Either way, didn't finish the day. This is the time, I think, of the novel writing process that motivation starts to rear its ugly head, if I can steal a cliche. Motivation or inspiration. Inspiration is an excuse for the lazy and a crutch for the unaccomplished. You will never accomplish anything if you simply work while you're motivated. If you are able to grasp motivation when it is there and capitalize on it, then you've really got something. But if you are sitting around and waiting for motivation, all you're doing is wasting time. And this is maybe the time in the novel where you have to really buckle down and remember that. Motivation isn't going to happen every day. We're losing the sweetheart feeling of this. We're losing the first date aspect of this. We are no longer wanting to try new restaurants with this story. We're going back to the same pizza joint. And it loses a little bit of this romanticism. And some of the characters are bastards that you didn't know they were. And some of the things going on, some of the places where we are, they're not really compelling, but we've got to get through them. As far as this goes, however, the 410-word pace, which is something I've never tried before, 410 words spread over 4 months as we march towards a 50,000-word piece. I'm really loving it. I'm really sort of enjoying that pace, really sort of enjoying that... It feels very fragmented, but at the same time, you try to take in the fury of a flash fiction every time you sit down to the force of a novel. So really what you're doing is you sit down and you're able to clean up the little bit from yesterday. You make one point or you paint one picture, you move on to the next thing, and then it's time to stop. And I've been forcing myself to stop right around the 410-word mark, which I think is working pretty well for me. There's been a few times where what I've done is I'll sit down and I will go back to previous pages and bolster something up, or make something more visible, or another one of the things that I will do from time to time to try to impact the power of my writing if I don't know where I'm going straight away is I'll flip back to a previous page in the writing and I'll say, okay, I've got this scene in my head. Can I add a sound? Can I add a taste? Is there some smell going on right now? Is there something... You work in each of the senses. Can you do something with the senses on that page? Because what that does for me is it triggers something way back in my brain that says, hey man, you're a writer. Make someone feel something. And if you can start with making someone feel something according to the senses, you're that much closer to making someone feel something according to the person part of the person. Making someone feel something in their emotions. Because they're inextricably linked. If I hit you in the face every day I see you, whether you love me or not, eventually you're going to fear me, right? So a physical part of writing will work its way into the emotional part of the story. And that's one thing that I am really enjoying about the 410 word mark, is you get to do one thing. So you try to pop in a little bit of the power of a flash fiction every time you sit down, which is the story that's over before you know it, which is very much how these words feel. And finally, for today, there was a storm recently, and I got a little bit of footage, I think about 30 seconds or so. So after the credits, I'm going to put that in. I don't know if maybe you're someone who enjoys storm sounds, or you enjoy writing to the sound of rain, or something, the aesthetic. That's the big word now these days, the aesthetic of something. I'll put that footage there, and maybe you'll find some inspiration from it. But it was definitely something that I took a second aside for myself and observed and sort of refreshed myself. And if there is anyone who wants me, I can upload that clip as its own standalone clip if anyone is interested in that, so that it could be put on replay without having to sit through 10 minutes of me rambling about stuff that probably no one wanted to hear anyway. But that's all I have for this episode. So I'm looking forward to hearing in the comments below where you are with your story, what's going well, what you're struggling with, where you think you're going, and something that has surprised you to this point in the writing. For me, the character of Chester Beetle, that character in this story for myself has surprised me with some of the revelations that I have come to with him. So that's something that has surprised me so far. If you like this sort of thing, or you are writing along with the project, or at least following along with other people who are writing and here on the videos, I would appreciate it if you hit a like, left me a like. Subscribe if you look forward to this. This is something I'm trying to do every year on Strip Cover Lit, is the Hot and Sticky Summer Novel Writing Challenge, as this is hashtag Hot and Sticky 18. And if you'd like to help us create more content on Strip Cover Lit, there is a link to our Patreon to be found in the description below. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we... What the fuck? Impossible.